Welcome back to OnChain Revolution, where we cover all things on-chain. As you guys can see, today's live stream is quite a bit different. Obviously, we don't have the intro music, and Shizzy's not here, as you can see, right? So I'm going to get into that. But before I do, there's a lot of other stuff that we're going to talk about today as well. We're going to get into some global liquidity signals that 4 years ago actually propelled ETH up 200%. We're going to talk about $1.5 billion worth of stable coins flowing back into Ethereum and BNB chain. So what does that mean? And how is that related to the Ethereum global liquidity relationship there, right? And some other things. Hyperliquid's up a bunch today, about 24%. And then you can go down the line. And another thing we're going to cover is the Bitcoin ecosystem as well. But let's tackle the elephant in the room, right? So what happened and what does the future of OnChain Revolution Media look like? So first and foremost, I want to start off by saying thank you to Shizzy for being my business partner for the past 3 years. We built something that's really cool together, and I'm proud of that, right? I'm proud of doing that with him, and you got a lot of you guys were a part of that journey, right? And over the years, as we got into 2025, and a lot of you guys know this, it got harder for the space, and harder for the show, really, and you try to think of different things to do to get better, right? And there was a point, I would say in Q4 of last year, to where I think we kind of got complacent, and I can say I definitely did. I can for sure. But pick myself back up and move forward, because that's what you got to do, right? And it came to a point to where I still had no life outside the show. So it's not like I wasn't dedicating myself to the show. It just, the motivation was a little bit different, I think. And we navigated a bit away from what actually helped us grow. And that's the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? And I get why we did that. And I went along with that as well. So, hey, I'm all in that as well in terms of the decisions that were made with that. So I take full accountability with that. But with that being said, we reached a point this past weekend where Shizzy wasn't happy with the way I was working, whether that was thumbnails or titles or the website. And, that's his prerogative to have his perspective. And so I respect that. And he said on Saturday morning that he wanted to go into a different direction. And, it did throw me off for sure. But again, I respected his opinion and what he wanted to do. And so we jumped on a call on Sunday, and I let him know, hey, I want to continue to carry the brand on since you want to create your own channel. And we came to an agreement, and I felt like it was amicable. There wasn't any animosity during that call, or at least none shown. I know on my part, I was very grateful for the experience that we had together. I let him know. And we came to an agreement. And the agreement was that I would take the brand and the YouTube account, and he would take the X account and a couple other things in the background, right? And so that's where we are. And whether Shizzy has ill will towards me or not, I'm not sure. I mean, I did see a post that seemed like he did. I have none towards him. I wish him the best. I think that he's talented at what he does, and I'm going to be rooting for him and his channel 1,000%. You don't partner with someone for 3 years and not want them to succeed. And so that's where I'm coming from with this. With that being said, what does the future of OnChain Revolution Media look like, right? People are probably wondering about that. As I mentioned, I'm carrying the brand on. I feel like I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this brand the past 3 years, and I want to continue that, right? And one of the major objectives on my side is to really reconnect with the Bitcoin ecosystem, because I felt like we didn't really show gratitude to a community, an ecosystem that actually gave us our success, right? And so that's going to be a major focus for me, leading this brand moving forward. I'll be connecting with, and I've already reached out to a lot of builders, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, other shows, definitely the Bitmap community. So if you're out there listening from the Bitmap community, we're definitely going to be covering that, and really just reconnecting, right? And that doesn't mean that's all we're going to cover. Of course, we're going to cover on-chain stuff as well. We're going to cover ETH, Solana, but just really reconnect to the roots that made us successful. So, I'm going to ask for some grace from you guys today. I didn't get very much sleep at all last night, dealing with some stuff, just trying to figure out how to handle this situation. It's a completely different dynamic, right? Moving forward, when you're used to working off of somebody, bouncing off of another co-host. But, what we do, or what my mentality has always been, is when you run into something that's tough, you pick yourself back up and you move forward. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I've always done. It might not be the easiest thing, but that's what I do. Okay. So definitely open to, taking any questions. I want to let you guys know I'm definitely fully committed to the show. I want to bring the best product to you, and the best research, and learn together, by the way. I was never in the position personally that, I felt like I knew it all. That was not something that I never wanted to get to from a mentality standpoint. And so, that's where we are right now with the show, and we'll move forward, right? So I see some comments in here for sure. Mr. Sheedy, what is up? He says, wearing my Ordinal Revolution t-shirt in show of support. Appreciate you. And he says, love you both. Hey, I mean, for sure. Look, as I mentioned, I want nothing but success for Shizzy, moving forward in his new channel. I'll be rooting for him. And he also says, I've been testing an inscription-based poker player with Obi-Wan. If you're interested, for sure, let's connect outside, of course, and see what's going on. But one of my main objectives is connecting again, like I said, with the Bitcoin ecosystem builders. I'm already pretty close with some, and I want to shout out the two partners that decided to stay with OnChain Revolution, and Omnity and Merlin Chain. I really appreciate their support, as well as Pyro, right? So Pyro is also one of our partners as well. So, but yeah, so now that we got that out of the way, as I mentioned before, I just asked for some grace here, as the show dynamics changes, right? And so I'm getting used to kind of what this is going to be like as a single host here. So, but all right. So now that is done, let's get into the main topic of the day. Let me pull up my charts here. This is kind of that grace part that I was telling you guys about. All right, here we go. All right, so let me share this. Well, actually, before I do that, let's talk about the topic here. So ETH did 200% last time this global liquidity signal flashed. So TradingView put an article out basically saying when the global liquidity gets aggressive to the upside, the Russell follows it, and then eventually Ethereum breaks up, right? So let me share my screen here. All right. As you can see right here, this is their example. They're going back to 2021 of March, in the beginning of March, and you can see the global liquidity here starts to break up, right? And then you see the Russell 2000, which is the low cap stocks, and then you see it start to break up. And then what happens with Ethereum a little bit later? It eventually catches up and it starts to break up, right? So this was whenever, alts really started to take off. And, what they're saying in this article is that we're getting to this kind of inflection point to where the global liquidity is starting to break up to the upside. And you're starting to see the Russell kind of follow it a little bit. And then do we repeat with Ethereum here, having that kind of alt market energy to the upside, right? Of course, historical patterns have been not friendly to us, right? So for me, it's really hard for me to, just take this historical pattern and say, okay, Ethereum's definitely going to pull up because we got the global liquidity that's going up, the Russell that is breaking out a little bit here, and then eventually, the ETH chart's going to break up, right? And if that happens, obviously people will start to feel like we're in alt season, and we're in a bear market right now, by the way. So this is something that, it's definitely not the popular opinion, because everybody feels doom and gloom right now. But if we do get this liquidity increase, right, that people are kind of projecting in a sense of like, are we going to go into this quantitative easing situation, right? Does the global liquidity altogether start to pull up? Well, let's dig a little bit more concentrated here and look at the Russell 2000, where we are in the daily. So this yellow line here is the global liquidity, and it is it's starting to get pretty aggressive on the daily chart. What is up? What is it? Smugtoshi. What is up? Patapoo. But as you can see here, the global liquidity is starting to get aggressive here. And this is the daily chart though, right? So the Russell is kind of still going sideways, but once we start to see this start to align, then we say, okay, maybe this is something that's going to come. Of course, that projection that we saw on the first chart, that is about, I would say about a month, a little bit over a month out, right? So we got about a month's time before this situation really plays out, if it matches the previous 4 years, 4 years ago, right? Okay, so now let's go to the weekly for the Russell, because I'm going to do a comparison here on for Ethereum. And if you look at the weekly, what does that look like? That looks pretty stinking aligned here, right? You see the Russell 2000 that's kind of pulling up along with the global liquidity to the upside, right? So from the weekly, it looks like it's matching up here, right? So we would need probably, another 4 weeks. What's up, KDN? Appreciate the support, brother. We would need this alignment to continue on here, right? For the next, I would say 4 weeks or probably 6 weeks. And then what would happen with Ethereum here, right? So going back to the daily, Ethereum is behind the Russell. So it kind of shows, like if you go here on the daily, back to the Russell, it's definitely much more close to the global liquidity for the Russell daily. But if you go to the Ethereum daily, it's behind, right? So it's kind of trailing that global liquidity there. So to me, so far, and this is the daily chart, mind you, it does look like, this could be a scenario that plays out. Now let's go to the weekly here and see if there's any type of, correlation. So the weekly is definitely behind the global liquidity. So, but if you go back to the Russell here, this is supposed to front run Ethereum anyways, right? So I think that there's a possibility here, guys, that this could play out. Now, of course, it definitely looks, doom and gloom right now. So this is something that we'll know, if there's any chance in about 2 to 3 weeks, if this is going to be playing out. But so far, as of right now, I like where we are with this. The Russell is aligned with the global liquidity on the weekly chart. Myself says, yo, trying to catch up at 2x speed. I wish you two the best. Are you sticking with the YouTube name? Yes, myself. Yeah, we're going to continue the brand here, the OnChain Revolution brand. I do know Shizzy, I think he's starting his channel called Shizzy Unchained. So, go give him a sub once he starts that. Definitely, I wish the best for him. But yeah, we'll continue the brand here. And both on YouTube and X. But appreciate you commenting, and appreciate you, KDN, too. You're the best, bro. Appreciate that, brother. Long time, KDN. It's been a long time for sure. All right, guys. So another thing I'm going to have to learn here is how to keep my voice, while I'm talking for an hour straight, right? I should have probably got some more water. Excuse me. That's another thing for the great thing that I'm going to ask you guys for is my voice here. But yeah, going back here to the Russell on the weekly, you can see it definitely lines up. So I'm curious myself, are you in the boat here that agrees that this could be a scenario that replays out, right? Because you look here back in 2021 of March, and the whole point here that this article from TradingView is once the global liquidity kicks up here, and then you see the Russell 2000 start to kick up, eventually Ethereum starts to kick up as well, right? And so the whole point is right now that global liquidity is starting to look pretty froggy. It wants to jump up here. And then you can see the Russell starting to follow it. And then all we need basically here is in 2 to 3 weeks is Ethereum to pull up. Now, it's easy to kind of look at this chart and say, this is something that looks like it's on track. But obviously where we are right now is doesn't look super bullish overall in general. But I am an optimist, and, I'm definitely going to be keeping track of this. We got Rick G, an OG from the Bitcoin ecosystem. He says, been a fan since DeFi days. Shizzy lost all credibility with his constant $750,000 call and nonsense. I will continue supporting OnChain Revolution as much as possible. Stick with Bitcoin. Appreciate you, Rick. Look, I mean, I was very much in the camp of Q4 2025. So I was I didn't want to let it go. My projections were more of 250,000 to 300,000, but man, it was tough to let that go, because that meant that we most likely weren't going to get an alt season, right? So I can see where he was coming from early on, but 750 was definitely a bit high for sure. All right, so that's kind of the scenario, guys, with the global liquidity. We'll keep our eye on it and see if that is something that is a possibility in 2 to 3 weeks. So, it's definitely on the table. But the next thing here is $1.4 billion of stable coins flowed into Ethereum, and 624 million into BNB chain the last 24 hours. So we talked about the scenario that's potential for the global liquidity to push Ethereum up in March, right? Now we're starting to see, almost $1.5 billion of stable coins flowing into Ethereum. Why would that be? Are people trying to get, some dry powder? Is that what the goal is here, to be ready for whenever things start to pop off, right? Let me see. You can see right here, Cointelegraph basically reported this. And it says 1.4 billion in stable coins flowed into Ethereum and 624 into BNB chain, like I just mentioned here. And it talks about the top stable coin supply changes, right? Ethereum, look at that. I mean, that is total domination right there. Okay. Then you got BNB really kind of ramping up here. Okay. But, if Ethereum starts to take off in March, then we know that BNB will follow as well. Then you have Tron kind of below that. And we know that Tron has always had like DeFi volume. So that makes sense there. And then you go down the line and then it drops off significantly. I mean, after BNB, really, you see Polygon, Arbitrum, and then basically they're leaving these chains to go here. So, that's something to also, consider as well. Is this something that is correlated to what's happening with, the global liquidity jumping up as well? So that could definitely be the case there. All right, guys, let me check and see. Mice Elf here says 100% ETH is the number one altcoin there. And then Tim says, oh boy, Timmy boy, what's going on? Tim Baker, welcome back to the show, sir. But yeah, it's a different show now. But if you go back to the beginning of the show, you can kind of catch everything there. But glad to have you back, sir. All right, let's take a look here at the crypto price action. Crypto price action here. Let me share the hour chart for Bitcoin. All right, guys, let's see what's happening for Bitcoin today. All right, you can see right here that we just kind of started to come out of this sell pressure. The MACD here looks like it's starting to close up, as you can see. And so we've broken this down here on the hour chart, and the stochastics looks like it wants to come up, right? So you can see we already kind of wicked up here to 88,600, right? And how aggressive does this become? Because this is wicking up to 88,600. Yes, it's pulled back here on this hour candle about 300, but this was during a sell pressure session on the MACD, right? So if we go into a buy pressure session, like does this get more aggressive, or is this something that is, almost kind of like a bait and switch, try to trick people into what is tomorrow, which is January 28th, is the FOMC, right? So as we know, the FOMC, before the FOMC, a lot of volatility happens. But we also know that the FOMC meeting is pretty much predetermined. If you look at Polymarket, I think there's a 1% chance at a 25 bips, 0.25 cut. So 99% sure that this is nothing's going to change, right? But still, the volatility happens regardless of what the perceived outcome is to be, right? And so what are we thinking for today? Honestly, I do feel like they're going to try to trick the traders here that want to take leverage here and push it up higher to the upside, right? I mean, that's what I'm seeing here. Now, this could obviously do a reversal and stay open, but it does look pretty convincing that we're going to come out of the sell pressure session. Oh, let me see if I got some more water here. Woo! Man, I remember Shizzy telling me that his mouth would get dry whenever he had to do a show alone. I can definitely see how he felt there. All right. As you pull up here, you can I'm seeing more of an aggressive push to the upside, like I mentioned. So I could see something like, trying to knock on the door of 89,000, 90,000 in the next 2 to 4 hours, right? Now, you can see the fast line here starting to curve up as well. And once this actually officially crosses over that orange line, the slow line, then we technically have a change of momentum. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for this to cross over, the stochastics to get more aggressive to the upside, get to that 60, 70 point mark here on the stochastic RSI, right? And then we'll see the candle follow here on the hourly chart there. So, I mean, that's what I see for the hour chart, right? I see a bit more to the upside, not anything super, super aggressive unless they're really trying to trap, these bulls, which, we could see that. Now, most decently experienced traders, right, they'll probably scalp that if that happens, because they're going to expect volatility tomorrow, regardless. It doesn't even matter, like, if it's a slam dunk that a rate cut's not going to happen or is going to happen. Volatility is a slam dunk, basically, right? Before the actual meeting here. All right, so let's go to the 4-hour. What's going to happen the next couple days? We're sitting here, on Tuesday, so this could give us a little insight for Wednesday and Thursday, right? So, I don't love this setup for the upside necessarily. You're seeing this kind of buy pressure momentum session get drug out here, right? So it kind of goes back whenever I see a scenario like this, it's always like what goes up must come down, what goes down must come up type of situation. And heading into the FOMC, it's just I feel like it's a disaster kind of waiting, right? So will there be like an extension of this? I think so, probably for maybe the next like leading up to the FOMC, and then we could see this going strong into sell pressure. So I would say be careful. Personally, me, if I were to be taking leverage right now, I would be very, very careful being in any positions before the FOMC. But most people already know that, right? So. Yeah, so that's what I'm seeing here, guys. Look, it looks like it could extend longer, but I just would not gamble that. I would not gamble that at all heading into the meeting tomorrow. So that is what I got for the 4-hour chart. Myself says ETH dominance and altcoin dominance correlates closely. I believe a rising ETH will raise all alts. Yeah, I agree. I agree. We didn't see too much of that in the summer whenever ETH decided to go on its own necessarily. There were some blue chips that did go with it. XRP was one of them for sure. But we didn't see it as a whole from the alt market sector, right? But, we definitely could see it this time, right? Because if that global liquidity, and especially if the Russell jumps up, because what happens whenever people are buying into the Russell? That means that the stock market's in a risk-on environment, and then Ethereum will benefit from that, right? And then of course the alt markets will as well. The altcoins will as well. So I actually think the Russell could be a really, really strong indicator. So we'll see what happens with Ethereum here. I think the next 2 to 3 weeks is going to be crucial for ETH. But yeah, so let's see what's happening here. The 4-hour I kind of mentioned, very, very tricky playing in tomorrow, right? With the FOMC. So be careful there. Let's see what's happening on the daily chart. The daily chart here is starting to get interesting too. So, this definitely could start to bleed again going into tomorrow if that FOMC is just basically super volatile like most people think it's going to be. And, this could extend out, but, the fact that it's breaking down here a little bit is starting to get me a little bit bullish on that weekly setup for Bitcoin, right? So, let's say that we go back and forth tomorrow, gets volatile, this decides it wants to bleed down. We go to like 86 or something. And then after all said and done, after the FOMC, we start to work our way back up and come out of this, right? For maybe it's like a 3-day scenario to where it extends out for another 3 days and we start to close this up. Then let's take a look here at the weekly chart if that's the situation, because this weekly chart to me for Bitcoin has been a chart that I have been looking at for a long time, and you guys know that myself, I've been talking about this for a while, that the setup here is very, very interesting for the weekly. The weekly is obviously a pretty zoomed out time frame, and so you don't necessarily get too much of a drawn out scenario. You can definitely get a drawn out scenario to it. For example, like this one actually switched the momentum in this area barely, and then it got extended out here, right? So this one's a little different in my opinion, because you look here, this is pretty aggressive during this period, but man, look at this. This was really aggressive. And you go back to when it kind of started to get aggressive, and what's that date? It's October 10th. Right, so the largest liquidation event in our space ever, and so it got really pummeled, and then you can see, hit that really intense sell down here, and then you start to see this. What I do want to see though is this fast line, just start to curl back up again. That is one thing that I really, really do want to see. Because if that happens, then, you know, and we get out of that daily sell pressure session, let's say we get out of it like by next week, this could be a very, very interesting scenario playing into the first week of February, right? So definitely an interesting setup for Bitcoin on the weekly. So, you know, I know there's been a lot of doom and gloom, and if you look at a lot of the instability from a geopolitical standpoint, and then the tariffs keep getting brought back up. But one thing that, you know, solves a lot of things is global liquidity, and it's going to be interesting to see if that continues to go to the upside. And I know that, you know, the main topic today is more focused on Ethereum, but global liquidity definitely affects Bitcoin as well, right? So, all right, let's get into ETH here before we get into the crypto bubbles. And again, you know, appreciate all the support from you guys, you know, giving me grace today, being, you know, going into this show with this is a different dynamic, right? And you guys have been amazing, and I have the largest like cotton mouth right now, but you guys are awesome. All right, let's take a look here at the hour chart for Ethereum. Ethereum's starting to get aggressive here. Wow, I mean, look at this candle, man. Wow, wow, wow. You can see here, you know, this candle's starting to look pretty juicy, and the MACD is getting really strong now. And we got about 29 minutes left in this candle. This is very, very interesting. You know, see if the stochastics can really start to get aggressive and hang out up here too on the hour chart. So, man, I wonder if, so I imagine Bitcoin too is probably getting pretty aggressive. I just want to see if this is like a ETH only thing. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty aggressive, this green candle for Bitcoin, but look at the MACD. And then you go back to ETH. I mean, yeah, there's definitely more momentum here, as you can see on the MACD indicator for Ethereum. So this is very, very interesting kind of playing out here. Again, you know, heading into the FOMC type of situation, I would be still very, very careful, just because you know that there's going to be volatility tomorrow for that. All right, let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart here looks really aggressive too. Now, this does concern me a little bit because we just, like I mentioned, just like the Bitcoin side of things, we have been pretty overextended here. But man, look how aggressive this is getting, right? I almost wonder if there's something more specific to Ethereum. And if any of you guys in the chat know, please drop it in there, because that's definitely something that I am interested in knowing. Because yeah, this ETH chart, the hour and now the 4-hour, looks really, really aggressive to the upside. But we are still under 3,000 here, and even though it looks good, man, I'd be very, very careful heading into tomorrow. So you know, I imagine some really good traders are going to be scalping this, and some people might hold it. You know, I would be very, very careful knowing that there's going to be volatility tomorrow. But hey, look, after tomorrow, if we can continue this momentum after the volatility, this could be interesting, especially with what we talked about to start the show with Ethereum, right? So, you know, we'll definitely go back to the Russell a bit here, you know, maybe tomorrow or the next day to see if it continues to the upside as well. All right, so the 4-hour looks really good, but, you know, tomorrow is definitely the volatility. So we got to see what happens after that FOMC decision there. Let's take a look here on the daily. The daily here looks like a pretty good setup as well. Looks like it wants to close up here. But again, you know, tomorrow's a dangerous day to hold through, I think, you know, personally. But look at the weekly. Let's take a look here on the weekly chart. So very similar situation to Bitcoin. Can we get through tomorrow and start to pick back up? I have a feeling that we will be, and you know, that could be a good start to next week. But that's what we got for Bitcoin and Ethereum, guys. You know, looks good for today. The 4-hour is tricky because we got, you know, the meeting tomorrow, but I think at the end of tomorrow we can really determine where these you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum really want to go. And that's something we'll definitely take a look at on Thursday morning. And then, of course, tomorrow after the show as well, and after the meeting, I'll definitely post it on the OnChain Revolution X account. By the way, you know, so one of the situations agreements was, you know, Shizzy took the X account that was for OnChain Revolution. I turned my Yagobi account into the OnChain Revolution. I started a new Yagobi account. So if you were following the old OnChain Revolution X account, please go make sure that you're following the new one. It's the same tag though, at OnChain Rev. And so you just need to follow that one. The follower accounts carried over to the account that Shizzy took over. So would definitely appreciate that. And also, since I have to start over from scratch, if you could follow at YagoBeverse, I would very much appreciate that as well. But yeah, let's take a look here at the crypto bubbles. In the top 100, we are seeing some green here on the day, right? So it makes sense. We just saw Bitcoin and Ethereum with that pretty good green to the push to the upside there. Some of these are sticking out for sure. Hyperliquid, right? So Hyperliquid is actually, in the headlines today. It was up 24% earlier, and people are wondering why. Why was Hyperliquid up, right? And I did some research. It's because people are freaking trading commodities on Hyperliquid. They're trading precious metals, gold, silver on Hyperliquid, which is amazing that you can do that, right? And so the volume has really jumped up so much that people are noticing the fee volume and revenue increase, and so they're just bullish on hype. So it makes a lot of sense for hype to jump up. And if you're thinking about how can you survive the bull market before things get bullish, hype has to be one of those tokens that crosses your mind, right? Because it's just had so much success and it has such a positive and strong outlook for the future, right? And it's a newer project, of course, if you compare it to a lot of these other blue chips in the top 100. But, that's a good thing, in my opinion, because it has, no pun intended, the hype, right? The hype along with it. So it is up right now, 21% on the day. And then you got Pump. And Pump is up about 20%. Now, Pump is a token that I feel like is it's a tricky one, right? Because you want to be bullish on it because of the volume that it does. But how long can Pump Fund sustain its dominance in terms of volume in Solana? I'm not sure. It's obviously been able to sustain the dominance in the meme coin launchpad, sector. But does the meme coin launchpad continue to dominate the volume on Solana? And I wouldn't be so sure about that long term, midterm even, right? But one thing that they have done is they, started to pivot towards being able to onboard startup type of projects. And many launchpads have attempted this without success. And so, you got to be a little weary of the, can they pull it off? They have the liquidity or the capital to do it, I think, and the user base. But we'll see. No one's been able to do it, right? No one's been able to have that true ICM success. And so, we'll see what happens. They have been showing really strong, consistent uptrends though with the token. This is actually one that my wife trades. And she's actually had some pretty good success recently with it. But I do warn her, hey, look, Pump can be volatile at some time, some different points, right? So it's something to just keep in the back of your mind. As of right now, though, it looks pretty strong to the upside. Lit protocol up 8% here. Lit is a interoperability protocol. Emblem Vault actually utilizes them with their TEE, way to do it in a decentralized way to be able to bridge, from Bitcoin over, because Bitcoin is one of the harder chains to have that true decentralized interoperability, right? And so I think they're a pretty solid play in terms of the substance that they have there. But up 8.1%, you got Zcash up about 10% here. And then what else? We got Dash, another privacy token here, up 3%. Aster, Perps, and Leverage. It's been, one of the themes of this cycle, or I don't know if we're in this, new cycle, because we're technically in a bear market type of situation. But you see Aster and Hyperliquid, right, having that same theme. And then you got Zcash and Dash on the privacy side. So, I think it's important to know which sectors in our space actually have had success, right? And it's definitely been Perps and Leverage, as well as privacy. those are definitely two. AI has had a lot of success as well, but I would say the past 6 to almost 10 months, it's been tough to really maintain that consistent momentum. I do think that it bounces back really strong though. So that's just some of the sectors. You see XMR, Monero here up about 4%, Chills up 11, barely over 11%, and then you got Stacks up 2% here. ETH up about 3%. River taking a hit after being pretty green though. Off and on, of course, but it's pulled back about 18% there. BNB up almost 3%. What else is sticking out here? Bitcoin Cash up 3%. Man, how does Bitcoin Cash and Satoshi's Vision continue to, be in the top 100, right? Maybe BSV is maybe in the top 200, but Bitcoin Cash still here in the top 100. That's interesting. Legacy, I feel like those type of tokens, Litecoin as well is kind of in that group there. And if there's any tokens you want me to take a look at, guys, just drop it in the chat. We got about 86 people in here. Definitely appreciate the support, guys. 70 on X, man. Really appreciate you guys. And then we got 16 on YouTube. It means a ton, to have the support from you guys for sure. Stacks up 2%. Let's take a look here at the top 200. All right. In ranked between 100 and 200, we got some that are sticking out here. Pippin up 24%. And then we got Monad up about 19.3% here. And so Monad actually, I felt like Monad really needed this, because Monad had been struggling previously. So the fact that they've been able to have this jump up, shout out to the Monad community. I know a lot of you guys have been really sticking with the token and the ecosystem. And look, if you've used the tech, you know that it rivals with Solana, right? With the speed, except for its EVM. And I've used it multiple times just directly from a wallet, like a MetaMask wallet. Feels almost exactly the same as using a Phantom on Solana. And I've used it with the terminals, right? GMGN and what's the other one there? It starts with an A. I can't think of it right now. But anyways, and so it lightning fast. So the one thing I do wish that the team would just really focus on the community a bit more there. And we'll see what happens. It is a VC backed chain, so not too shocked with that. And then you see Pith up 13.4%. Kite up 9% here. Moonbeam up 9.5%. The Justin Sun protocol here called Sun down 11.4%. You got Pulse X up 4% here. And then XPL Plasma bouncing up almost 5%. So, pretty cool to see some of these tokens bounce back up. Now, Fartcoin was something that we always looked at as kind of an indicator of how the markets are doing, right? Like more of the trenches, right? The degens. And it's up 3.1%. So that is always a good thing. And Melania, wow, this was voted the worst token of 2025, and it is up 2.6%. So I don't know, maybe there's a little hint here that alts, the degen side of them at least might pump up here. But I mean, I feel like overall, the crypto bubbles looks pretty solid. You're seeing kind of like this 85, maybe 80 to 20% ratio, 80% to the upside and then 20% to the downside here. But we got some comments in here. Mice Elf says, all I see is higher highs and higher lows on the Bitcoin weekly chart. That uptrend hasn't broke yet. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't. Let's take a look at that actually. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't broken here. And if you look here, I think this is what you're talking about. We're really just putting this right here. So it hasn't broken from that. And I guess you could just bring this out here like that. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't broken below that. And for that to happen, we would need to see it drop probably like 82, right? For it to actually The weekly chart to me is really tricky right now, but it's also very, very crucial. It's very crucial because if you pull in the 50, is it the SMA? I think it is. Let me go to settings here. Yeah, so this right here is something that I have been looking at a lot. And the reason why is because whenever Bitcoin breaks below the 50 SMA, most of the time, it's whenever it's a start to a new bear market, right? So you can go here, January of basically 2022 is when it first broke down below I actually think it was late December of 2021. It broke down below the 50 SMA on the weekly chart. And it continued on, and it did tease above the 50 SMA, but only to come back down. And so, it was kind of like, okay, some people said, well, this got to be the bear market. They got tricked out here. Said, oh, no, never mind. And I remember, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do if you were here for the last cycle, but the people wanted to hold on to that bull market. And I get it, right? Like if you got in late and you were still holding the bag and it was late 2021, early 2022, you were just and there was reasons to feel like it because you had ecosystems, whether that was like Phantom, Chronos, or other EVM style chains, Avalanche, that were still putting out billion-dollar market cap tokens. And I felt like it went till about March, right? So, the fact that this broke down here and came back up, I can understand why people were not, accepting that we were probably in a bear market until you got here. And then, of course, you had the war with Russia and Ukraine. And then you had FTX, Luna, all that stuff was like one of the worst like consecutive things to happen. And then that's whenever it pretty much put us into that bear market. So if you look here in the middle though, right, and you look at this scenario, because you're saying, well, Yago B, you're saying that every time it breaks down below, we're in a bear market. There are anomalies, and this is one of them. COVID was a forced, to the downside scenario. And it did get bought back up here, right? It did take some time, but it wasn't, in fact, a bear market. It was like this kind of everybody was fearful, everybody was scared, and all the markets crashed at the same time. And so Bitcoin definitely got exposure to that. And so that's what happened here. And then we came out and then we got to see some bullish times. And so that's what I'm hoping for here. Is it hopium? Maybe. But if you look here, bear market and, breaking below the 50 SMA, stayed down here, came back up, and then anomaly. And then look, broke down here, bear market, came back up, anomaly. Do we get another anomaly here to match COVID there? What is up, Stan? Stan says, in the channel's opinion, is the Web3 community more concerned about the tech or the price of, let me change this up here. Give me 1 second. Sorry. All right. The tech or the price appreciation. Thanks. So I feel like right now we're still in that price appreciation as a industry, but I do think that changes. I think that changes to be more of substance and utility type of approach, right? The reason I say that is because we have seen firsthand that the space has changed, right? You're seeing institutions come in and, basically try to set the rules and we haven't had really this alt market. So, I do think that with time, they're going to try to have revenue and business principles be more of, what is going to be considered more important, right? But all right, guys, let's get back into some of these topics here as we're rounding out the hour. Let's see here. We talked about hype. All right, let's take a look here. Tether bought 27 tons of gold in Q4 of 2025. How crazy is that? 27 tons of gold in the fourth quarter of last year. So I think this is super bullish. And some people might be like, why? You know, they're buying gold, they're not buying Bitcoin. But if you think about it, what does Tether always buy eventually? They buy Bitcoin, right? And so they're taking advantage, in my opinion, of the availability of being able to probably print USDT and purchasing gold. And then once they feel like, you know, gold is close to that top and they sell that down, then what are they going to, you know, do with that? You know, a lot of that profit. If I were to guess, I would think that they're going to buy Bitcoin, right? So, you know, this gets me really, really bullish here. And you follow it up with something like this, right? So then you see Tether here, where it says Tether has launched USAT, a federally regulated dollar-backed stablecoin designed for the U.S. market. We knew that this was going to happen. You know, they had put news out about this, but you know, basically they just, you know, made it official here that they launched it, right? So this is kind of the previous story that I just talked about, right? Buying 27 tons of gold in the last quarter of 2025. Now they actually have a product for a stable coin in the US. You don't think that Bitcoin is going to be a big part of this plan. And the article says here, it says the largest company in the digital asset industry, largest company, we all kind of knew that, right? Today announces the official launch of USAT, the federally regulated dollar-backed stablecoin, developed specifically to operate within the United States. A new federal stablecoin framework established under the Genius Act. The issuer of USAT is Anchorage Digital Bank, NA's America's first federally regulated stablecoin issuer. I mean, I feel like that's huge, right? A bank is issuing their stablecoin. So to me, this kind of ties in with why I'm bullish about them buying the gold, and you know, they're gonna kind of do what they always do and start to purchase Bitcoin as well. So really, really bullish with that. Definitely excited to see, you know, what comes of the stablecoin, and you know, when they start to sell that gold down, because I do think that that's going to be a thing. Do I think they sell it all down? Maybe not, but they have a bunch of assets that they just kind of hold, including bonds. They're one of the largest bond holders, U.S. bond holders, right? All right, let's move on here. Oh, here's another thing here as well. It says Trump family-backed American Bitcoin increased its holdings by 416 Bitcoin. All right, so another thing to be bullish about Bitcoin, right, is, you know, if the Trump organization is adding more to their balance sheet of Bitcoin, they're increasing it. You don't think that they are going to make sure that Bitcoin is going to go up? I feel like this is definitely you know, a bullish, you know, headline here. How long does it take for Bitcoin to go up? I'm sure they're not super concerned about that because they hold this many Bitcoin and they know that it's just going to go up, you know, over time here. So bullish on that as well. All right, guys. I'm going to go over a couple things here in the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? I mentioned that we're going to reconnect with the Bitcoin ecosystem is one of the main goals that I have for the brand and the channel and our community, really, right? That doesn't mean that we're not going to go over trenches and stuff like that, right? But the first thing that we're going to hit on here is this right here. All right. So if you are familiar with the Bitcoin ecosystem, then you know who LIFO FIFO is. LIFO FIFO. He is I think he's the founder of the Wizards of Ord. So he launched niftyrescue.ord.net, I guess. But the cool part of this, though, is there is a project called Nifty Gate, I believe, and it's a NFT project, Nifty Gateway Studio. It's an NFT project that is shutting down, right? So they're basically saying, hey, look, you got to get your NFTs. It's on Ethereum, right? ERC 721, and we're going to shut down. So you got to get them. And what LiFoFIFO did, he created a way for you to not have to worry about the IPFS, right? Which is awesome, because we've always known that, like, IPFS is this, kind of argument point for Bitcoin ordinals, and everything lives on Bitcoin. It's always pointed at the Ord indexer. And so what he did was he created a platform for you to point your Nifty Gateway NFT to the Ord indexer, and you don't have to worry about it again. You can see here, it says point ERC 721 to Ord and never have to worry about it again. So you can go to this website here and you can, start to migrate that over. And I think this is one of the really cool things that just doesn't get hit on that much about Bitcoin ordinals and inscriptions, is that, look, you don't have to worry about IPFS. It's something that will live on Bitcoin forever and point to the Ord. And also, after Omnity created a smart contract version of the Ord indexer that will live on forever, and it's ran with a what's it called? Smart contract on ICP. I think what are they called? Starts with a C. It's not contract though. It's I can't remember. But anyways, basically, the Ord indexer will be decentralized forever. So now, you'll always have the ability to not lose your image, even if they don't pay someone got me Canister. There it is, Stan. Canister, yes. Even if the IPFS monthly bill isn't paid, it will always live on the Ord indexer. So this is just kind of the start, because it's a pain point that LiFoFIFO is creating to be able to help these people out. And I think we see more of this, right? I think we see more of this. So shout out LiFoFIFO for creating this. He creates a bunch of cool stuff. Go give him a shout out. Go give him a follow as well at LiFoFIFO on X. And then let's check out the next update. And the next update here is Citria is live. And I think this is a pretty big deal, because if you go back to, one of the reasons that the op return data limitations was increased, and I don't think they'll probably say this outright, but Citria had a lot of influence, in my opinion, to make that happen. And that was one of the reasons why the Luke Dash Juniors and the Maxis didn't want to have that limitation increase, because what it did is it basically made using BitVM a lot easier. And because now they can fit more into the op return to, have these complex kind of transactions and data that's fit in there, right? And so here's their post right here, and it says, which I was thrown off here. It says 1/8, which then it says today. So that has to not mean January 8th. It's probably maybe 1/8 of today. So 1/8 of going live is live. But it says Citria mainnet goes live. We're officially live with the first Bitcoin application layer that enables institutions and individuals to lend, trade, and settle directly on the Bitcoin network. Start your journey with Citria dashboard. And so, 1/8 posts. So it's like a thread here. And it goes down here and it says, past efforts to build an ecosystem for Bitcoin were forced to sacrifice programmability or rely on heavy trust assumptions that limited adoption. Citria marks a new beginning, an end-to-an-end Bitcoin ecosystem that relies solely on the Bitcoin network as its source of truth. And then you go down here and it hits on Bitcoin's first ZK rollup and application layer. So I think that's a big deal, because everybody's been claiming that, hey, we're going to have this ZK rollup coming, and so they get to say that they were the first here. And it says, what makes Citria underlining technology truly unique is the combination of enabling the first trust minimized BTC on a fully programmable Bitcoin layer and a direct economic contribution to the Bitcoin network. They wanted to make sure that they're rewarding, the miners and being able to be a part of that whole mechanism there. But you can see right here, CBTC is powered by Clementine, a collateral efficient, trust minimized, and scalable Bitcoin bridge. The presence of one honest party is enough to detect and challenge malicious activity. Signers. Yeah, and then you can kind of go through here, and it talks about the stable coin that's going to be here, and it's issued by MoonPay. So, there's a lot of potential here. I was able to meet this team in Nashville when I went to the Bitcoin conference in 2024. And so, that is something, it's really cool to see that this come to fruition for sure. And, so that is pretty much what we got for the Bitcoin ecosystem as of right now. Like I mentioned, I'm in talks with many builders, collection founders, Bitmap community. So if you're a part of the Bitmap community, give me a shout out. Let's jump on a call. I know Block 9, I've been talking to him. He has a really cool music and entertainment type of product. And Sheedy, I'm definitely down to jump on a call with you as well. And really just want to connect again with you guys. And, other communities as well, Abstract, Zora, different, Base and stuff like that. But I definitely want to make a concentrated effort to reconnect with the Bitcoin ecosystem and community. I definitely have a special place in my heart, and I feel like I need to earn that trust back in a sense. And you go through things and you learn, and that's what happened this past 3 years, and learned a lot of good things, and picked up some bad habits and stuff like that. But all you can do is try to be better and get better, and that's what my goal is. And it's always been my goal in life, is to pick yourself up no matter the situation and move forward there. But yeah, I appreciate all of you guys. Arita in the chat, PeersNet, shout out to you as well. Sheedy, Patapoo, KDN, Mice Elf, Tim Baker, Rick G, Stan. I'm going to try to get Fonzie on the show as well, down the line. And I help co-host that Spaces on Thursdays with Ordinal Hive as well. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I will continually say this, no matter if it's just me running the show or, another co-host comes, like, without you guys, I can't do the show. We can't do the show. The brand can't do the show. And so thankful for your support and just showing up and commenting, especially in a day like today. I'm not gonna lie, nerve-wracking for sure, different setup, different flow, but you guys showing up and just giving that support was amazing. But yeah, if you could check out the partners, greatly appreciate that as well. The Merlin chain with their AI Wizard 2.0, can swap for tokens outside the ecosystem as well. And staking on merlinchain.io, you can do the Bitcoin staking 3-month lockup. APR, they shoot for 8 to 21%. It's not guaranteed, but that's what they shoot for. And then you have the day-to-day for the Merlin Chain token as well, 15% APR. And then the 6-month lockup, which they shoot for that 45% APR as well. And then Omnity or Satsman, right? .fun. You want to be familiarized with that platform for when the Bitcoin ecosystem does bounce back. Because, one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is, when did the Bitcoin ecosystem start to jump up in general? This last time it was 2023. It was actually late 2022, early 2023 when the overall market was dormant, right? And so kind of similar situation. I've noticed ordinals start to pop up. But, if you're looking to etch a rune sticker, you can do it easily at satsman.fun. You can launch your token. You can mint tokens there. And once the liquidity comes back to the space, you want to be familiar with it. You can, you can start bidding on these short name tickers as well. I think that's going to be really important. And then richswap.io is where you would swap for those. So head over to OnChain. I almost said Ordinal Revolution. OnChainRevolution.io. Check out the website. I fully updated it. doing articles every day as well. You can get a VPN from NordVPN. You get a discount as well there. But appreciate each and every one of you guys, man. Love y'all, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.